Good evening, friends. First of all, I would want to thank all of you to invite PwC to make this presentation. As I am the third speaker, I think I'll be very short, but I'll touch upon the important aspects which are very relevant for you. And as Jay mentioned in the beginning that there were 9 pillars based on which he had given and proposed all these proposals. I think yes, that's very fair because he wanted to give benefit to certain sectors and industries, and at the same time he wanted to tax certain sectors and industries. And that's exactly what he has done by either imposing certain cesses like infrastructure cess, which actually impacts the automobile sector because he wants to collect more tax from this sector so that more of the tax collected could be used for investments of roads, etc. And at the same time, if we see, he has given benefit to certain sectors, especially the construction sector. There were a lot of exemptions which were assigned earlier. And when we talk about retrospective amendments, it generally comes to our mind that there would be tax collections. But what he has done in this year is to give these benefits by way of retrospective amendments to the construction sector, because a lot of road projects, etc., which were granted in 2015 and 16, the exemption was withdrawn, and he has restored those exemptions. So certain benefits to education sector, tourism sector, he has done that, and there was a discussion with respect to the benefits which he wants to give to the FS, financial services sector. I think there are certain changes with respect to financial services and benefits to financial sector as well. So with that background, we will go to the proposals. And as far as the rate is concerned, yes, of course, there is no change to the e-customs duty rate or the central excise rate. And even to the service tax, the base rate is the same. But what he has done is he has introduced Krishi Kalyan cess. And if you would remember last budget, there was a proposal to impose Swachh Bharat cess. So Swachh Bharat cess, which was proposed at 2%, ultimately came at the implementation stage at 0.5%. And this budget, we have seen this Krishi Kalyan cess. So basically the effective rate of service tax goes up to 15%, literally 14% the base rate, and 0.5 and 0.5% the two cesses. But what he has actually done is that for Krishi Kalyan cess, it's convertible, which means that you can avail the credit of this cess and utilize for the payment of this cess. But whereas Swachh Bharat says there is no credit which is available, which is specifically provided. So which means that if we talk about the effective rate of service tax, it's actually not 15%, it's much higher because Swachh Bharat 0.5 would actually be 1.5. So, but with GST, even if GST tax a lot of these services, these would be in the range of 16 to 18%. So I think with that mindset, he has imposed these two cesses. The better way, which I personally feel could have been to increase the service tax rate to 15% and not impose these two cesses. He could have in any ways allocated the collection to whichever department he wanted to do, because imposing these different cesses leads to a lot of problems like invoicing, credit utilization, making changes to the systems, the IT systems and all. And if these cesses are getting implemented and getting changed so frequently, it's actually against what he wants to do in terms of ease of doing business. So I think that's the take on the cess. No discussion on indirect taxes can actually happen without a reference to goods and services tax. And I think what he has done in this budget, and I think it's a smart thing, he did not talk too much about goods and services tax. Because I think, and that's right in a way, because the expectation of the industry and everybody is that the GST would be implemented. And every year these announcements are happening. So it's basically just like that story of Sher Aaya, Sher Aaya, Sher Aaya. So, and I think this year he has not spoken anything, but if we actually see the work which is happening either on the IT infrastructure in terms of GST network and in terms of the drafting of the legislation, I think they are going at a decent pace. It's just that the politics will have to come down when it comes to economics, and if that happens in this budget, I think there are fair chances that we can see GST in April 2017. So with that, I'll move on. With respect to the additional resource mobilization, and I mentioned about the Krishi Kalyan cess, and interestingly, he has imposed this infrastructure cess, and I think it will impact every person who would buy a car. And while I was sitting there, even Jay asked me that when is this infrastructure cess getting implemented? So yes, it's a key cess because all the cars would become expensive. There are different thresholds depending on the engine capacity, depending on the make, etc. Like for example, if it's diesel, petrol, CNG, 1200 engine capacity, and so on and so forth. But yes, the cess would be applicable on all the cars which would be sold, so which would basically increase the cost. With respect to other details, for example, transportation of goods into India by vessel, yes, there are certain exemptions which have been withdrawn, and I think he wanted to reduce certain of these exemptions, especially when the credit is allowed. And in these cases where he felt that the credit can be allowed, he has reduced those so that the tax chain is not broken. So transportation of passengers by stage carrier is another example wherein the air conditioned and the non-air conditioned, there is a distinction now. The air conditioned stage carriers get taxed. So another point is with respect to the BCD and the CBD on imitation jewelry, gold, silver bar increased. And in 2010, this was the excise duty was imposed, but there were a lot of discussions and a lot of jewelers come on the streets, etc., protests, and this was again withdrawn. I think he wants to restore this tax because clearly he wants to make certain sectors taxable. So for example, this jewelry sector, he wants to impose excise duty and CBD on this. Automobile sector, he wants to impose duties on these sectors. Another point is with respect to the services provided by senior advocates, and there was an exemption or certain taxes were paid under the reverse charge category. What he wants to now do is that as far as the services of senior advocates are concerned, he has taxed these services and he has taxed these services under the forward charge. So it's not under the reverse charge, so basically these senior advocates will have to pay tax when they are rendering these services to corporates or to other lawyers, etc. But of course, if these services are rendered to individuals, yes, the exemption continues. There are certain changes in the MRP valuation, and so I would not go into details of all these, but if we see the second point, which basically talks about the software recorded in media, and why this is very critical is because the software industry, and as we speak, are facing multiple challenges, and the challenges are not only with respect to both the federal taxes and the state taxes, so which means that a particular transaction cannot be taxed both by the federal government and the state government, and whether it's goods and services. And to couple, the problem was whether both federal taxes on the same transaction could be levied. So can central excise duty can also be paid if the service transaction and the software is with respect to services. And I think that mutually exclusive fundamental point has been addressed, which is a very welcome move. So at least there is no dispute with respect to the two federal taxes being levied on the software industry. He has given certain abatements, rationalized tour operator services, and with respect to rent-a-cab and other services, he has done some rationalization, which I think is decent enough. It reduces the complexity and the confusion. Streamlining litigation, and I think Jay also spoke about it, and Anil also spoke about it, that the message is to reduce litigation. And I think another way to reduce litigation is to clear backlog, because lot of matters are pending. And if we see the indirect tax litigation, there were only 6 tribunals, but now with new tribunals coming up, in cities like Allahabad, Chandigarh and Hyderabad, I think there is a requirement of more benches, and that's what has been announced in this budget. So definitely the pressure on commissionates like Bangalore would reduce because a lot of cases would move to Hyderabad, and similarly commissionates, tribunals like Delhi would have a space to breathe because a lot of matters would now move to Allahabad and Chandigarh. So I think with these new benches, that's a good move. Another thing is with respect to the indirect tax dispute resolution scheme, and as in the direct taxes, this scheme has been introduced here as well, but this is restricted only to commissioner appeals. So with restricted thing, it will give certain benefit because there is huge pendency even at the commissioner appeal level. So I think it's a good thought as well to reduce the disputes. The last point in this slide is very interesting, and that talks about the limitation period. And why is that very interesting is that while the extended period of limitation for central excise, service tax and customs is 5 years, so which means that the government, while demanding the show cause notice, can go back to 5 years if there is fraud, etc. But what this budget has done is this has increased the threshold limit when there is no fraud, malafide, etc. And that for service tax has gone up from 18 months to 30 months. And for customs and excise also there is a change, it has increased from 1 year to 2 years. So which means that for the bona fide mistakes or where there was no fraud intent or some ambiguous issues, even if the negative order comes, lot of times because these were not related to fraud, the demands which used to materialize was only for a limited period of 1 year or 18 months, depending on whether it was a service tax or customs matter. But with this number of years going up, I think the assessees will have to face that trauma of paying the higher demands if these issues were ambiguous and decided negatively by the higher forums. Again, coming to ease of doing business, I think he has made certain changes with respect to revision of returns, etc. So I will again not go into these details, but very important point is with respect to the interest rates. And that point is very important because interest rates, especially for service tax, were very exorbitant. These rates ranged from 18% to as high as 30%. And I think that rationalization has been done. So he has basically reduced and rationalized it to 15%, but he has kept the higher rate of 24% in case the tax is collected and not paid. So while it's a welcome move, there needs to be more clarification of what he means by collected and not paid, whether it is just being charged on the invoice or whether it is actual realization. And for the same transaction now, there is a possibility that you would end up calculating two different rates, 15% for a particular period and a higher rate of 24% for the particular period. So that would lead to some administrative issues, but of course this is a welcome move. Last point on this slide is with respect to power of arrest. And there have been a lot of instances in service tax wherein the CEOs and the CFOs have been issued these arrest warrants. It has happened for one of the travel agent portals, a very well-known portal, and it was very sad that because of some areas, the people went behind the bars, and then there were delays in getting bails, etc. So I think this is a very welcome move because not only he has increased the limit from 1 crore to 2 crore, but also as far as 4 offences were concerned, out of those 4 offences he has removed 3 offences, and it is only with respect to the tax collected but not paid that this power of arrest can be used. So I think that's a good news. And why we kept this slide with respect to changes, and of course I don't want to go into the details, the technical details, but this segment is nothing but a mechanism by which the service providers and the manufacturers can get the free flow of credits both on the input side of service tax and the central excise duty, which they can use for the output taxes. So these Senate rules required a lot of changes, and this budget I think has done a lot of changes to Senate rule which gives more certainty, and there are lot of provisions which required more clarity. So with respect to Senate, I think the technical changes which have been made to these rules are a welcome move, because industry was expecting these changes to happen for last couple of years, but which unfortunately did not happen in last couple of years. So I think this year with respect to the Senate changes, these rules are welcome as well. At the same time, certain sectors which were given some ad hoc credit reversal provisions. For example, the FS sector, the banks were required to reverse 50% of the credit on the ad hoc basis. Now there are different options which are available to the bank. They can actually go on ad hoc reversal or an actuals. So again, these were some of the points which were missing when these were introduced in the Senate rules, but I think most of these points have now been addressed in these rules. So I would not go into the specific rates, DCDs, etc., which have been increased or decreased. But with respect to some other significant changes is that they have introduced the concept of annual returns and service tax, which is good because at one glance the department can see the entire details of the services rendered during the year and so on and so forth. Reverse charge mechanism, that's the technical point which was introduced in the last budget. The date was not notified, which has been notified now. Again, the export of goods extended retrospective rebate. So this has again been introduced now, and he has made certain benefits from a retrospective effect, so that these benefits can flow down to the exporters. And the fourth point is with respect to right to use the radio frequency spectrum, and as it was mentioned in the earlier presentations also, that there will be a lot of sale and right to use of these spectrums in the days to come. And I think what he has done is he has addressed this problem of right to use the radio frequency spectrum by saying that it's a declared service. And so what the law now specifically says is that all these transactions would be subject to service tax. These are declared as services, but at the same time, I think it cannot be ruled out that the state VAT authorities would not come and tax these transactions even with respect to VAT. So I think with respect to these spectrum also, there needs to be more clarity that these are services, not goods, and hence should not be subject to state taxes. And I think if that comes by way of a clarification or in whatever means, it will be good for the industry. That's all from the indirect tax side. I've kept it short, but I'll be happy to address any of the questions if you have in specific.
Thank you, Anil, and thank you, Abhishek, for those excellent presentations. I think the budget would have been amply clear and clarified thanks to your comments. We'll now take questions from the floor. So if you have any questions, please stand up, introduce yourself and ask the question briefly. The mics are going up.
The professional maintaining books of accounts, so whether he has the option at the end, decide whether I have to go under the presumptive or I need to go under tax audit. Whether he has the option or he is strictly in accounts. He has the option.
So he has the option, but once he picks that option, then you cannot make the change again. So you can't keep swapping year to year. You have to pick once and then stick to it.
44EE.
Yes.
Business has a condition for
For professionals it doesn't, but for business it does.
I'm Mohan Yelani, I'm the President of All India Importers Association. My question is probably like regarding the presumptive tax on professional. Is there a definition of professional? You didn't mention the doctors when you mentioned the professional. Doctors are also included in this? Yes.
There's no service, no, doctors are not included. Lawyers, engineers, architects.
Interior designers, accountants.
I don't think doctors are.
Just to give some clarification.
Medical is included. Yes.
Not medical also.
Medical is included.
Thank you.
I'm Mahendra Kalanchi. My question is for Mr. Anil. Sir, this introduction of
Could you just speak up? We can't hear you here.
With the introduction of so many dispute resolutions, do you think there will be increase in disputes and litigation? Since the government was trying to reduce litigation and have less number of taxes, there so many amendments in this budget.
Well, there are many amendments, and because of that, there may be some more litigation. But because of the dispute resolution scheme, there will be less litigation. So you'll have to see what the net result is. Some litigation will always continue because that's the nature of human beings.
I'm Pramod Shah, practicing company secretary and department chairman of ICSI. So this specialist was here. So we refer to certain economic aspects, impact on the budget. So would you throw some light on your views on the capital markets? What do you think it would affect? Because market went up, down, and all that. And second thing, sir, will the new budget will be able to bring more FDI or not, sir?
Sorry, what is the last question?
Will this new budget will be able to attract foreign direct investment more or not?
I'll address the second question first because that's easier.